Hi, I'm a bandwagoner. And this basically started because I'm a serial bandwagoner. It started actually probably when I was born. I feel like there's always something that I become obsessed with during a lull period in my life. My most recent offense as a bandwagoner before this one that we'll get into is Harry Potter. I spent hours at work, at home, listening to podcasts and learning about family trees and how Snape is actually Luna. I just know too much for someone who just picked up a book like 2 weeks ago. But one series I didn't bandwagon on is Star Wars. For as long as I can remember, I've loved Star Wars. I think about being a kid and how we would like reenact the Christopher Lee and like Yoda scene when like the trailers would come on for Attack of the Clones. Like, that shit fills me. And because of that, and because of my connection to Star Wars, I'm realizing I contextualize other shows and movies through the lens of Star Wars. This obsessive comparison to Star Wars became very clear when I started my newest obsession, Avatar: The Last Airbender. I started realizing that I was saying out loud, like, are they trying to Star Wars at least 4 times within a book. That's not a metric. 4 times within an Avatar book, you can't get a rate from that. Regardless, there's a lot of overlap between Avatar and Star Wars. So this begs the question, which is better? No, it doesn't. Something that I do want to keep in mind is that I'm treating Star Wars as if it's like the precedent for these tropes. I know that Star Wars is influenced by a lot of like the samurai text and like imagery from Akira Kurosawa in his filmmaking. And with that, connecting that with Avatar, which is also just like an American attempt at anime, I feel like there has to be a connection. So I'm definitely treating Star Wars as if it's the precedent for all these tropes and like storylines, when it's likely that the overlap isn't white George Lucas, you know? It's very likely that these have roots in Japanese storytelling, and I'm just not familiar with it. I'm pitting Star Wars' 3 trilogies against the 3 books of Avatar. Establishing rules. Every and any movie from the original Skywalker saga is up for grabs. Secondly, I'm sticking to the movies. So this is gonna be out of 7 points. All right, so we're gonna take essentially 5 different tropes, but the last trope we're gonna break down into 3 different points. Let's start with the first one. The unstable elderly guy that we met is actually the wise former friend that we were looking for. Both series have a wise old guy that the protagonist or the lead doesn't recognize immediately and somewhat undermines. In Empire, Luke goes on a hunt to find Master Yoda per the advice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And essentially, he just runs into Frank Oz being a maniac for like the first 20 minutes that we meet him. Luke doesn't know that this is an act, and he's actually one of the strongest Jedi to ever live. The Avatar parallel to this is Boomy. For Boomy, it wasn't an act. He's actually unstable and insane, but doesn't really take away from his wisdom or his impact on the plot. Aang goes to meet his old friend after being gone for 100 years, after leaving everyone for 100 years, and he obviously doesn't recognize him because dude's aged 100 years. Because of this, I actually think there's an edge to Avatar for having the best reveal. It's also kind of unfair. I think the first Star Wars movie I saw was Attack of the Clones, so I've only seen Yoda taking names, whooping ass, you know? And it's kind of hard to have a good reveal when you already know the potential for the character in question. So this point is actually gonna come down to the impact that this character has on the plot. So in terms of impact, Yoda's the one that trained Luke. There's no other Jedi alive. Yoda is basically the last hope. A new hope. Yoda agrees to train Luke despite his age and continues to support him in return. Without Yoda, there is no training Luke in Dagobah and letting him see his potential demise if he goes to the dark side. But even if Luke fails because he doesn't get trained by Yoda, let's say for the sake of argument, there is another. There's other people working on the Resistance. There's Leia. The Avatar is the only person that can bring balance. Without Boomy making the decision to let Aang find Toph, to find that master, we wouldn't have had a number of clutch saves that essentially save the life of a Team Avatar member. Toph is integral to the survival of Team Avatar. And at the end of the day, without Boomy leading them in that direction, I don't know that they would have valued Toph. I'm gonna give this point to Avatar. The next trope is The loved one captured by sand people trope. This is the one that made me like, okay, there's something to this. During the episode called The Library, Appa gets captured by sandbenders while Toph is trying to keep the library from sinking. I don't know why I said it like that. In Attack of the Clones, Anakin's mom is kidnapped from their home planet of Tatooine and is tortured by sand people who apparently just do it because they like torturing people. So the way that the characters respond, Aang loses it on the sandbenders. And this was the point in which I totally thought that we were gonna see some death. And then I have to remember that like, okay, this is a Nickelodeon show from 2005. Maybe I should calm down. But at the end of the day, I thought that this would be like a reckoning moment for Aang. And I think in its own way it is, because he has to learn patience and overcome his anger and sadness over losing Appa, who's been kind of his companion since the beginning of his life. Anakin leaves his post protecting Princess Queen Amidala, his future wife, might I add, goes to the Sand People's village and kills them all. Granted, I think this difference does do a really good job of showing or foreshadowing kind of where their fate lies in terms of fulfilling their role as the chosen one. Aang has to reconcile his anger and prioritize getting the plans about the eclipse to the Earth Kingdom. George Lucas, on the other hand, just had to give a reason for why in the next movie you're gonna see Anakin in a full emo black robe. We get it. He's bad now. Setting the stage for future stories and plots, I think that did less for Aang in terms of showing his level-headedness and his decision-making qualities. Anakin's decision was a pivotal point in his journey as the chosen one, the fallen chosen one. I think it was a rung below pivotal for Aang. That definitely sets the stage for like who Anakin is for the rest of Attack and for all of Revenge. Like, Anakin is a different person after he makes that decision, and that's the turning point for Star Wars. The next trope is stopping my training to save my friends. Aang stops his training while he's working with the Guru, right before he actually unlocks his last chakra, because he senses that Katara's in trouble, just as Luke preemptively ends his training with Yoda on Dagobah because he senses that Han and Leia are in trouble. The Guru warns Aang that if he leaves, he's not going to be able to unlock that last chakra ever again, and he essentially is not going to be able to control the Avatar state. Just as Yoda tells Luke that he will fail in his battle against Darth Vader if he leaves before his training's complete. I don't have any memory of Aang reaping the consequences of leaving that training. If I remember correctly, there was only this fear that hypothetically he wouldn't be able to control it. So ultimately, I don't think there were consequences for him leaving that training. The consequences for Luke, he loses a limb. He loses a limb, yeah. So just by virtue of there being any consequences, to my memory, we're gonna give this point to Star Wars. The do it trope. The opening scene of Revenge of the Sith, to where Anakin, Obi-Wan, Count Dooku, and Emperor Palpatine wreak havoc. The do it scene for Avatar, I'm choosing the last episode of Book 2, where Azula gets Zuko to turn on Katara and Aang. Because there's that discrepancy to where Star Wars' do it ends with a death and Avatar's does not, we're gonna characterize it as this just to have a baseline. It's the moment in which the powerful but morally fragile character, being Zuko and Anakin, have a pivotal decision to make. It's influenced by the villain, and that character ultimately gives in to that influence. Comparing these two, I guess, uses of the do it, I definitely think this is where Avatar's character development like really benefits it. I genuinely didn't know if Zuko was gonna betray Ito, Aang, and Katara just at the off chance that he would gain his father's acceptance. It was anyone's guess. In terms of Anakin, the moment that I saw him catch that lightsaber and cross it, 5-year-old me knew I was gonna witness a decapitation. Like, there was no doubt in my mind he was going to kill him. Mind you, this is the episode after the Sand People slaughterhouse, okay? The thing with Zuko is there was potential for redemption. Everything felt possible. He could go either way. Anakin, he was at the point of no return. Point for Avatar. All right, we got the last one, baby. Let's do it. The last trope is the redemption from the father figure trope. This is our 3-parter, okay? The initial relationship, setting the tone for the impact of the betrayal. 2, the stakes of the betrayal. And then the satisfaction of the redemption. I'm going to compare Han Solo and Kylo Ren's redemption arc to Zuko and Uncle Ito's. Let's do it! I love this one. In terms of character development, Avatar is just superior. We saw Zuko never shut up for the first book about capturing the Avatar. We saw Ito try and balance supporting his nephew, but also trying to push him in the direction of molding his own destiny. Zuko starts to accept this new life through the guidance of Ito. The series allows for more time to develop the relationship between Ito and Zuko, whereas the first installment of the trilogy only gives about 2 hours to flesh out whatever relationship Han or Ben had. I'll try and put like my own opinion about J.J. Abrams out of this, but I think it actually really impacts this point. It feels like the writers only really had an end point in mind as opposed to developing a story that would warrant a justified and earned outcome. They kind of developed the storyline like, okay, we know we need to have a mentor relationship for Rey, so let's make that father figure Han Solo. We also need to power scale our villain, Kylo Ren, show that he has little to lose, give a reason for Rey to want to join this fight. Let's have Kylo kill Han Solo. You see how that doesn't actually give you a relationship between the father that's killed by his son? The film doesn't give you anything before that to establish a relationship between Kylo and Han. Because of this, Avatar gets the point. So next point, the stakes of the betrayal. The consequence of Zuko betraying Ito is that Ito is now even more dishonored than he was before, and he's now in prison. For Kylo, he killed his father. Han Solo, and for fans, Han Solo got killed. Harrison Ford got what he wanted. Point for Star Wars. So the last point is for redemption. The scene on Kefir is such an impactful moment because I think it illustrates that all he has left of his parents is their memory. I think for Zuko, I kind of always knew that Zuko would be forgiven by Ito, which made that a little bit less impactful. Ito ultimately was alive. He was in prison, and then we find out he's actually not even mad at him. But in terms of just the consequence of Kylo's betrayal, that makes his redemption that much sweeter. You know, like he's not doing this because his dad's gonna be able to pat him on the back after. Like he's doing this because it's the last way that he can honor the people that he wronged. And for that reason, Star Wars wins. These are all tropes that I was introduced to first by Star Wars, and Avatar definitely did some of them better. I totally get the hype, and I'm so happy to be on the hype train now. Welcome me to the fan club. The bandwagon is here, baby.